3 bone-chilling side effects from August 2025's full moon. What happens in the next 48 hours? The night was alive with whispers, secrets twisting through the damp air like wild vines. The August full moon hung low in the sky, a colossal, glowing orb casting eerie shadows across the empty streets. Something was coming. A storm brewed within the hearts and minds of the townsfolk, thick with fear and excitement. It wouldn't last long. The full moon always had a way of stirring the pot, but this one, oh, this one was special. People were reporting strange occurrences, craves that felt like dark, irresistible urges bubbling at the surface. Sarah, the local librarian, had never been one for superstition, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Footsteps echoed in her mind, whispering secrets just beyond reach. Some claimed they had seen flickers of movement just outside their windows, twisting and turning as if something was trying to break through. Emotions ran high, anticipation crackled like electricity in the air. And then there were the nightmares. Friends spoke in hushed tones about waking up drenched in sweat, heart pounding like a drum against their ribcage. Black shapes danced at the corners of their vision while they fought to catch their breath. The whole town felt locked in this strange, sinister rhythm, one that spiraled deeper with each passing hour. With the moon now hovering ominously, the air buzzed with an urgent need for answers. What would happen when the clock struck midnight? A few brave souls decided to investigate. They made plans to gather by Moonlight Hill, drawn like moths to a flame. But as they set out, a chilling howl echoed through the air, silencing their jokes and playful banter. It was the kind of sound that sent shivers racing up their spines. Was it just a coyote, or could it be something more? Each looked nervously at one another, the unspoken question hanging there: what truly awaited them under the spell of the full moon? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As they reached the crest of Moonlight Hill, a ghostly branch cracked underfoot. The air shifted, thick with tension. The moon above seemed to pulse, bathing the land in an unnatural glow, fueling their adrenaline. Just then, a chilling scream split the night, clawing at their very souls. Who or what was it? The group froze, eyes wide, hearts racing, wrapped in the enchanting fear that swirled around them. What other secrets would the night reveal? What price would they pay for diving into this mystery? The questions lingered, tangled like shadows beneath the radiant full moon. The air crackled with a heavy kind of silence, the kind that wraps around you like a suffocating blanket. The scream hung momentarily, then faded into an eerie stillness that felt more alive than the chaos of noise. Each member of the group exchanged nervous glances, their breaths shallow, hearts thunderous. "Did you hear that?" whispered Mark, his voice barely a tremor above the wind. Sarah felt it resonate deep within her, an unsettling vibration that pulsed with fear. She clutched her arms, suddenly cold. What was that? Before anyone could respond, a crackle of branches drew their attention to the overgrown edge of the hill. Shadows elongated in the moonlight, forming monstrous shapes. Josh stepped forward, bravely breaking the fearful trance. "It's just the wind, right?" But a second howl echoed this one deeper, growling, shaking the ground beneath them. It sent a bolt of icy dread down their spines. "Let us go back," Lisa said, her voice quivering, eyes darting around as if the darkness might swallow her whole. The others quickly nodded, urgency making them forget their initial bravery. But just as they turned to flee, they felt an energy that was no longer just in the air, but something massive and palpable, wrapping around them. Their instincts screamed for them to run. Something was waiting. Suddenly, a figure darted past the trees, a blur of darkness that made their skin crawl. A primal instinct kicked in, and they screamed in unison, hands flying to cover their mouths. But the sound of their own fear echoed back at them, drowning out the silence that had wrapped around Moonlight Hill moments before. "Did you see that?" Sarah gasped, her heart pounding against her rib cage. "We should stick together." Panic rose in them like a tidal wave, forcing their legs into action. They stumbled backward down the path, slipping over gnarled roots, breathless with terror as they heard rustling behind them. But it wasn't just the rustling that was unsettling, it was the whispers entwined within it. Almost human, they ebbed and flowed, mingling with the wind, drawing closer. "Help us please," a voice drifted through the air, wrapping around their minds like a cold, foggy haze. Mark stopped suddenly, frozen in place. "Did you hear that?" His face went pale. "Mark, don't!" Lisa cried, panic crawling up her throat. But it was too late. He turned, eyes wide with curiosity against the backdrop of horror. What if they need help? The group tugged on his arm, urgency in their eyes. "No. We can't stay." But the moon above seemed to pull at them, luring them back, mixing fear with a strange allure that cracked open the lid of the unknown. It wasn't just their instincts battling with each other, this was something primal. Something hungry. As they backed away, a flash of silver caught Sarah's eye, a momentary glimpse of a face, gaunt, watchful. It was gone before she could blink. What had she seen? A trick of the light? Or a warning? The moon loomed over them, a brilliant eye watching from above, and in that moment, they understood. This night was only the prologue. They hadn't just come to the hill, they had stumbled into the heart of something monstrous. The group made a hurried pact in silence, an unspoken agreement to escape. They ran, panting, the howls echoing behind them like the haunting memory of a nightmare that threatened to consume them whole, but the memories were just beginning. And as dawn approached, they realized one chilling truth: the full moon would not fade quietly, its shadows would linger. What would haunt them in their dreams? And would they ever truly escape what they had awakened? Under the persistent glow of the full moon, the secrets were just beginning to unravel. They ran, roots snagging at their feet, the ground seeming to twist beneath them. Each step felt heavier, as if the earth itself conspired against their escape. The howls persisted, a cruel symphony that teased their thoughts, pulling them backward into uncharted terror. The woods around Moonlight Hill were alive, and it was hungry. "Faster!" Sarah urged, her breath hot and ragged. The distant howls morphed into laughter, mocking their desperation. Shadows swirled at the edges of her vision, always just out of reach, hiding in the dark recesses of the trees. Mark led the way, eyes darting, searching for clarity amidst the chaos. "We can't separate," he shouted over the growing cacophony, but with each word, his voice trembled like a leaf caught in a storm. "We have to stick together." Lisa screamed, nearly tripping on a root, grasping the nearest hand as she stumbled. They were a single entity now, bound by panic. As they pressed forward, the whispers scaled in intensity, intertwining with the rustling leaves, curling around their minds with an insidious grip. Join us," the voices called, sweet and sinister. They were no longer just echoes from the hill but real, tangible threats that clawed at the edges of their sanity. "Do you hear that?" Josh gasped, halting suddenly. "What are they saying?" "Don't listen." Sarah shot back, but the warning felt too late, like trying to stop a train barreling toward them. Each flicker of movement in the underbrush sent surges of dread racing through their veins. Something was weaving through the trees, patient and predatory, drawing closer. The darkness was no longer imaginary, it was a tangible force, looming just out of sight. Suddenly, the group skidded to a halt as a chilled wind swept over them. An icy presence brushed against Sarah's skin, making the hairs on her neck stand on end. She shuddered, the whispers growing louder, more urgent, drowning out her thoughts. Help us," it merged into one long, haunting melody, wrapping around her mind until she felt like she was suffocating. "Keep moving," Mark shouted, pulling her back. But it was too late, her feet felt rooted to the ground. It was as if the hill itself was calling her, drawing her in like a moth to a flame. "Let go of me!" Sarah shrieked, breaking free from Mark's grasp, moving toward the sound. The others lunged to grab her, but she was lost, consumed by the seductive nature of the voices. A single flash as if someone had flicked a switch created a crack in the night. For a heartbeat, she felt clear. "Sarah!" Josh yelled, panic piercing the chaos. The moment was fleeting, fading like mist, and all at once, the real fear settled in. The darkness closed in, pressing against them. The whispers turned sharp, demanding, and Sarah's heart pounded as a shadow slid past her periphery. A figure stood at the edge of the darkness, just beyond the wandering moonlight, staring with predatory intent. "Run!" She screamed, and the spell shattered. Fear catalyzed their instincts, forcing their legs to move. They tore back towards the path that led down the hill, scrambling clumsily over the uneven ground as adrenaline surged through them. The shadows chased them, lurking right beyond the trees, but they didn't dare look back. The howls erupted again, a cacophony of rage and despair, echoing through the night. Just when they thought they could bury the hill behind them, they reached the clearing, but the oppressive silence returned, heavier than before. It sat on their shoulders like lead, squeezing the air from their lungs. They could see the edges of the town in the distance, lights flickering like stars calling them home. "It's over," Josh breathed, though doubt crept through his words. "Isn't it?" But the question lingered. They were haunted by more than the terror of the night. They carried the shadows with them, unwilling to let go. It wasn't the hill they had to worry about now. The whispers had followed them, echoing in their minds, ready to reveal their twisted truth. What if it isn't over? Lisa murmured, her eyes wide with fear, glancing back toward the hill, and as they stumbled into the fragile light of familiarity, an unmistakable chill curled around them. The moon hung high in the sky, shining more vividly than it ever had before. With its glow, it illuminated the truth something deep within them had awakened. And whatever it wasn't done with them yet. What would they face when the sun set again? They barely had time to catch their breath when the first jolt of panic hit them again. It was the sharp sound of something snapping, like a twig crushed underfoot. That sound warped their fragile safety, turning the quiet clearing back into a cauldron of dread. The shadows cast by the moon danced unnaturally, flickering with intention. "Did you hear that?" Lisa stammered, her voice a fragile thread of fear. "Just the wind," Mark replied, but the quiver in his words betrayed him. They stood, strung tight as a bow, listening. The howls had quieted, but the air buzzed with a new hum, a low vibration that dripped with menace. The glow of the moon painted their faces in stark relief, but there was an unsettling quality to the light, as if it held secrets they weren't meant to uncover. "Let us just get out of here," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "Let us go. Now." As they began to move, nothing felt right. Each step echoed in their minds like a warning bell. The path wound ahead like a serpent, and despite the flickering town lights ahead, the darkness seemed to swallow them whole. Just ahead, a chill swept through the air, colder than any winter night. The feeling was oppressive, pushing down on their backs like a weight. It wasn't just fear, it was dread. Pure, suffocating dread. They dashed toward the flickers in hopes of finding safety, scanning the periphery for lurking shadows. But there was movement, dark figures, barely formed in the corner of their eyes. Shapes that shifted and slipped away as soon as they turned. Something was out there. Watching them. Waiting. What if it's back? Josh's voice cracked, fear lacing through. There was a sense of urgency, like a race against something unseen. "Stop talking like that." Mark snapped, but the harshness of his words felt weak against the tempest of terror that swept through them. They quickened their pace, their feet pounding against the dirt, matching the frantic rhythm of their hearts. As they neared the edge of the woods, the whispers crawled back into their ears, swirling like a storm, demanding attention. You can't run, no. Don't listen." Sarah yelled, but her voice wavered. That eerie choir was tugging at her, each note pulling taut the threads of their sanity. It felt like a trap, a web spun with delicate strands of shadow and light, ensnaring her thoughts. Suddenly, Lisa dropped to her knees. I can't breathe," she gasped, her face turning ashen. "Get up!" Mark shouted, urgency spilling from his words. He bent to pull her up, but for a moment, he hesitated. The confusion in her eyes struck him deeper than any lurking shadow could. "What is happening to us?" Josh whispered, backing away, glancing nervously into the dark woods. "This isn't right." And then there it was, a flash, sudden and bright, cutting through the darkness like lightning splitting the night sky. For an instant, they saw it, a silhouette standing among the trees, elongated and thin. It flickered like a candle, but the eyes were alive, glowing with a malevolent hunger that twisted their stomachs in an icy clasp. "Run!" Sarah screamed again, and their instincts kicked in just like before. They bolted, under the gaze that bore into them, tearing down the path with every ounce of fear propelling them forward. What they didn't realize was that some shadows don't fade back into the night. They cling. They attach. They linger like a ghost in the heart, waiting for the right moment to reveal their true nature. As they burst from the trees and into the town, the lights flickering wildly around them, they thought they were safe. But the shadows that pursued them hadn't just come from the hill. They had landed in every corner of their souls. "What if the darkness comes for us at dawn?" Josh breathed, eyes darting into the moonlit distance, and just like that, a grim realization sank in. Perhaps they weren't just running from the hill. As dawn approached, the barrier between fear and reality thinned. What they didn't know was how closely the darkness had entwined with them. Were they ready to face the horrors that awaited them when the sun rose? The air felt different as the sun began to tease the horizon, brushing everything in tense shades of gray and gold. Shadows stretched with the creeping light, but none dared to fall behind them, whispering jibes as they fled. The frantic rhythm of their hearts was matched only by the haste of their footsteps. "Keep moving," Sarah urged, her voice urgent and sharp, but the words felt heavy in the cool morning air. Mark glanced back, a flicker of doubt in his mind. "We can't just run forever. We need to think." Lisa interjected, breathless and wild-eyed. "That thing is out there, it's coming for us." "What do you want to think about, dying?" The weight of her words hung in the air like a thick fog. Every second counted, but as they ran into the heart of the town, the familiar sights twisted through their minds like an unfinished puzzle. The bakery with the sweet aroma of pastries, the little park where they once laughed now, each corner, each shadow seemed filled with potential terror. As they rounded a corner, they found themselves in front of Joe's diner, the neon sign flickering in a way that made their stomachs turn. The door swung open, and old Joe stumbled out, blinking as though awakening from a long sleep. He began speaking, but no words made sense, just panic-laced confusion as he took in the sight of the frantic group. "Are you kids all right?" Joe shouted, his voice carrying over the din of their breathless explanations. "No, we're not," Sarah retorted, her urgency igniting something in Joe that made him take a step back, fear clouding his features. "I gotta call the cops," he stammered, fumbling for his phone, but as he lifted it, a sudden shriek pierced the morning silence, sharp and desperate. It sent electric chills through their spines. "What the hell was that?" Mark asked, his voice barely above a whisper, and then they heard it, a low rumble, like thunder underfoot, a sound that whispered their worst fears back to them. With horror, they watched as a ripple of shadow burst from the edge of the diner, dark and alive, a creature of dusk pulling itself into the light, unwilling to be banished. "Run!" Josh screamed, the word exploding from him. They turned to flee again, but a thick fog rolled in, encasing them in a chilling embrace. In the distance, sirens wailed, but they felt like empty cries merging with the shadows. The darkness poured through the streets, a visible curse, lapping at their heels with each pounding heartbeat. Mark grasped Lisa's arm as they weaved past the parked cars, desperate and panicked. "Where do we go?" he panted, eyes wide with terror. "Where is safe?" "Anywhere but here." Lisa replied, grounded only by the scorching grasp of adrenaline. She glimpsed shadows chasing them, stretching toward their terrified forms. As they veered into the alleyway beside the diner, Sarah spotted an old maintenance door ajar. "In there!" she shouted, and they piled through it, crashing into a dim, cluttered room filled with abandoned tools and forgotten memories. Once inside, they all fell silent, ears straining to hear the world outside. The shadows danced wildly in the streaks of sunlight slicing through broken windows. "What if it follows us?" Josh breathed, his eyes darting nervously as he clutched Lisa, who was trembling at his side, and just then, the door creaked. A slow, deliberate sound that made their eyes widen with dread. Mark pushed against the wall, wishing to dissolve into the shadows. "What now?" he whispered, but deep down, they all feared they already knew the answer. The growl returned, closer now, reverberating through the room as the low weight of fear pressed down on them. Pressing against each other, they glanced toward the door, the murmur of a dark creature drifting through the cracks. Were they just delaying the inevitable? As the fog crept inside their hiding place, they realized the war against the shadows wasn't over. Ravenous, the darkness would not stop until it had what it came for. What was intuitive, turning everything they believed into ash and despair, waited just outside that door. Would the dawn bring them safety, or was it merely a facade, masking something far more sinister lurking closer than they dared to imagine? The air grew thicker, as if the fog itself was listening. Each heartbeat echoed in the confined space, straining under the weight of dread. Mark swallowed hard, his throat dry and tight. "We need to stick together," he whispered, the sound barely escaping his lips. The flickering shadows from the broken windows felt like sharp teeth gnashing hungrily just outside. Joe backed away from the door, panic overriding his usual steady demeanor. "What if it gets in?" he said, his voice pitched, eyes wide. "We can't let it see us, we can't let it know we're here." Sarah's breath hitched. She scanned their dim surroundings, spotting a rusty toolbox stacked precariously in the corner. "We need something to block the door," she said. "Something heavy." Lisa looked at the toolbox, then back at Josh, who nodded. "I'll help," he said, moving toward it. The noise of their footsteps felt delicate, as if any sound could summon the lurking horror outside. With heavy hands, Josh and Lisa maneuvered the toolbox to the door, pushing it into place just as a clawing noise erupted outside, a desperate scraping that sounded like nails on chalkboard, an otherworldly whisper of menace. "We can't stay here," Mark said, panic flaring through his chest. "This place isn't safe. It wanted us in the open." His voice trailed off, fear manifesting as a tremor that ran through him, and then, it came. The growling morphed into something more, a guttural sound that resonated deep within their bones. It rolled over them like a wave, unfurling shadows creeping through the very cracks of the floorboards. The claustrophobia pressed down on them, tightening like a noose. "Shut up!" Joe hissed, fear coloring his words. "You're making it worse." But despite his words, they all heard it, a soft thud, a sporadic shift as if the creature was pacing, hunting. The door rattled again, a deep thump that sent shivers coursing through Sarah's spine. Is it trying to get in?" Lisa whimpered, her eyes brimming with tears. "Of course it is." Josh shot back, his voice sharp like a knife, lashing out because the terror had to find a target. Tension hung taut in the air, a thin line ready to snap. Outside, the air thickened, the fog swirling like an evanescent blanket obscuring all. Behind them, something shifted again, the rasp of claws against the wood. Mark clenched his fists, his fingernails digging into his skin. "We need to find a way out," he said, looking at Sarah, who nodded. They were suffocating, trapped between a beast and a door that felt more like a death sentence. Then, breaking their anxious silence, came a voice, a faint whisper, riding the chilling wind. Help! It coiled around them, insidious and inviting. It carried a haunting familiarity, tugging on half-formed fears. "Did you hear that?" Sarah asked, her breath catching. "Someone's out there, don't answer." Joe cried, but it was too late. The lure was intoxicating, the promise of rescue wrapped in false hope. Josh stepped closer to the door, hand reaching instinctively toward the knob. "Wait." Lisa grabbed his arm, fear bolting through her. It could be a trap. But an overwhelming urge to understand, to see if salvation was there, overwhelmed him. As he pressed closer, the temperature in the room plummeted, the shadows pulling back like curtains, revealing a figure just beyond the veil of fog. The darkness shifted, morphing into something unspeakable, crawling towards the edge of the light. The whispers grew louder, a chorus rising above the growls, and all at once, the horror of realization washed over them. They had awakened whatever lurked in the night, trapped in a game more sinister than they imagined. They now faced a choice with deadly stakes. Would they open the door and face the unknown, or seal their fates in an empty room, doomed by inaction? The question throbbed like a live wire in their minds, with time slipping away and shadows lunging forward, hungry for a snap of finality. The moment Josh's fingers brushed the cold doorknob, a wave of dread crashed over him. It felt like touching ice, and he recoiled. But something deep in him yearned to understand. The shadows writhed just outside, and he could almost see the figure in outline, dark and pulsing with malicious intent. "Don't!" Mark shouted now, grabbing Josh's shoulder, hard enough to make him yelp, snapping him from his trance. "We can't risk it. Is this what we want? Whatever's out there is feeding off our fear. What if they were right?" He turned to their faces, hopelessness mixed with a spark of shared defiance swirling in their eyes. To stay trapped felt like a slow death, but what lay outside was a certainty cloaked in terror. Help! It came again, the whisper drawing them closer, a sinister lullaby laced with false promise. "Can you hear it?" Sarah's voice trembled, a mix of intrigue and defiance. "What if someone really needs our help? That's what it wants us to think." Joe hissed, wild-eyed. "It's a trick." The door shook again, a desperate rattling as if protesting their indecision. The air, thick like syrup, pulsed with anticipation. The figure outside twisted into various shapes, sometimes a child, sometimes something twisted and grotesque. It was a memory, or perhaps a nightmare. Mark's breath ached in his chest. "Let us barricade it tighter," Lisa urged, her urgency setting fire to their stalling. "If we're not going out, we need to make sure it doesn't get in." They moved quickly, arms flying to secure the toolbox. Mark felt the weight in his muscles, an exhausting dread mixed with adrenaline, pushing them all into survival mode. The scraping grew more frantic outside, as if the creature understood their resolve. Mark's heart was racing. What if it's human? What if we're making the wrong choice? Does it matter? Josh snapped, the tension tightening the air like a noose. "We don't know what it is. All we know is it's outside, and it wants in." Suddenly, the whisper morphed again, it became layered in sorrow, aching with loss. "Help me please." Mark felt it tug at him, each syllable a personal stab. Then, out of nowhere, the walls began to tremble. Dust fell from overhead beams, and they all exchanged panicked looks. The realization ran through them: whatever was out there wanted in. "Back away from the door!" Joe shouted, stepping back instinctively. They all shifted, fear heightening their senses. Then, deep grating laughter erupted from outside, penetrating the silence like shattering glass. It was hideous, a dark sound that echoed their deepest fears. "Whatever it is, it's here for more than just us," Sarah whispered, her voice barely making it past her trembling lips. "Our fear, it thrives on it. Maybe if we stay quiet?" Josh suggested, his resolve wavering. "Or maybe we stand up and confront it." Mark shot back, his heart racing with fury against the encroaching dread. They were backed into an impossible corner, the growling morphed into a rhythmic chant, surrounding them, circling like wolves. Panic seeped into their skin, weighing heavy in their bones. The floor quaked, remnants of their gathering dread manifesting into something real. Josh's eyes darted to the window. "It can't get through this way, we're safe." At least for a moment, but suddenly, a mighty crash erupted from behind the door. The toolbox flew aside, teeth gnashing and claws scratching their way closer. "Find something," Joe commanded urgently. "A weapon, anything." But as they searched in a frenzy, the whispers grew louder. "Help us! Help us!" Now sounding nearly human, Mark's heart raced, each second splitting into 1,000 thoughts. They were at a crossroads. Would they help what was out there, or battle against a force beyond comprehension? Then, from beyond the shadows, a chilling question vibrated. "Who among you is worthy?" The darkness paused, an impenetrable black at the edges, waiting for a choice that would seal their fates forever. The air felt electric, charged with an uncertainty that gnawed at them. The question hung in the darkness like a weight, almost tangible. Mark felt his heart slam against his ribcage. Worthy? What could possibly make one of them worthy? Worthy of what? Mark muttered, the words a mere breath. He glanced around, seeing fear mirrored in everyone's eyes. It was palpable, thick. Joe clutched a rusty wrench, his knuckles white with tension. Lisa's lips trembled, struggling to form a response that would offer comfort. "It wants us to choose," Sarah whispered, her voice crackling like a dry branch underfoot. "But what does it want?" Josh stepped forward, pushing against the creeping fear. Maybe it's asking for a sacrifice. It wants something from us. A trade. Like what? Our humanity. Joe shot back, anger mixed with sheer terror in his eyes. It could just want to eat us. The floor creaked ominously under their shifting weight. Another crash splintered the stillness, as something slammed against the door again, more forceful this time. Mark winced, anticipating the splinters flying into the room. They reinforced it as best they could, but this wasn't what would keep them safe. "Please, let us not panic," Lisa urged, her voice shaky but firm, cutting through the gathering storm of their emotions. "We need to think." "Think? About what?" Joe spat, desperation clawing at him. "There's a monster outside, and it's not going to stop until it gets what it wants." Yet as they all stood in that suffocating dark, Mark felt a flicker of clarity amid the chaos. He remembered the tales his grandmother used to tell about creatures from under the bed and whispers lost in the wind, each a warning wrapped in myth. What if, Mark began, slowly, piecing together threads of memory, what if it's not just about us? What if it's about facing something we all hide from? What if it's looking for strength? Suddenly, laughter erupted again, but not from the outside. It echoed inside, weaving between them, crawling into their minds. The darkness seemed to ripple, twisting and contorting as an overwhelming sense of dread rolled over Mark, constricting his throat. "Strength?" Josh breathed, bewilderment etching every feature of his face. "What kind of strength does it want?" The figure outside morphed again, now it appeared as a familiar face, grotesque but strangely comforting, a family member or dear friend. Mark felt bile rise at the sight. No, it can't. Is that?" Lisa gasped, clutching her stomach as if the creature's voice grew inside her. "They're twisting our memories," Joe said, backing away, his grip on the wrench loosened as he stumbled against the wall. "They're using our love against us. It's trying to break us." The chant from outside rose, swirling in intensity, a cacophony of pleading voices sewn together, intertwining sorrow and dread. It was almost beautiful, yet utterly horrific. "Who will give the gift?" The darkness demanded again, its voice a melding of all their fears now. Mark took a trembling breath, his mind racing. "Maybe it's time we confront our own ghosts. If we can face it, if we don't give in." Before he could finish, the door jolted violently, knocking him backwards. The group gasped, instinctively huddling together, but inside Mark grew more resolute. This could be a turning point. Whatever it is, it's feeding off us. We need to stop it. He shouted, voice rising above the din. Just then, the whispers seemed to pull back, a moment of silence enveloped them, leaving only their ragged breaths as swirling shadows receded. But as Mark looked around, a chilling realization settled in. Each of them wore shadows of their own fear, memories intertwining desperately with their present resolve. What if it could truly get inside them, past the barricades they erected? What if one of them truly was worthy to step into the void and confront the creature? The darkness thickened again, burning with unseen eyes. Who will it be? Mark's heart raced as another crash reverberated from the door. We can't let it choose. We have to choose for ourselves. The moment stretched, a taut line about to snap, as they all looked at each other. Who would be the one to uncover the truth hidden in the shadows? And would they survive the choice? The air turned cold again, whispering promises and threats alike. They had to decide, and fast. The darkness wasn't waiting, and time was running out. Outside, the laughter morphed into a single chilling voice. You're running out of time and I'm growing hungry. What lay behind that door? And what price would they pay for courage? Mark's breath came in shallow gasps, the weight of the moment threatening to crush him under its enormity. The others stood frozen, eyes darting between him and the door as if it held all the answers they desperately sought. In that pregnant silence, fear morphed into a palpable presence, snaking through the cracks in their resolve. What if it's asking for sacrifice? Joe's voice barely rose above a whisper, shared by the others. What if one of us has to step out there? No. Lisa's eyes flared with defiance, her unshakable spirit rising against the despair. We don't even know what's out there. We can't hand ourselves over. Yet the shadows seemed to thicken, pressing in on them, hungry for resolve. A grotesque face flickered in and out of the darkness, her brother's twisted grin, flickering memories of laughter now suffocated by malice. Stop it! Sarah cried, hands clamping over her ears as if to shut them out. But the laughter echoed louder, and in Mark's chest, doubt began to blossom. Maybe he hesitated, heart pounding at the possibility. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad if we knew what it really wanted. Maybe we could bargain with it. Bargain? With a monster? Josh barked, his voice layered with disbelief. You're insane. But what if? Mark pressed on, his voice trembling but resolute. What if we confront it instead of running? What if we face the truths we've locked away? Then it can't hold power over us. The door suddenly rattled again, more violently this time, as if something monstrous awaited on the other side, desperate to break free. An icy breath swept through their small huddle, sending shivers down their backs. What kind of truth? Joe growled, hands trembling around his wrench. My truth is that I'm scared stiff. I don't want to die here. The laughter outside morphed into a cacophony of voices, each carrying screams of anguish and loss. Shadows twisted, and in those moments, memories flickered back, lost loves, abandoned dreams, unsaid apologies, and those long-buried regrets clawing at the edges of their consciousness. Look at it. Lisa's voice rose above the growing din, pointing at the door, her face pale and drawn. It's feeding. We can't show it our weaknesses. And yet was there strength in revealing their fears? Mark felt his heart pound in his ears. If we can lean on each other, maybe we can channel this into something powerful. Maybe we become the force it doesn't expect. As he spoke, the air thickened with a heavy tension, almost as if the room was drawing energy from their collective fears, twisting it into something they couldn't yet comprehend. Then we need to talk, Josh said, his breath a low growl, but Mark could see the gears turning in his mind. We need to dig deep. We need a plan that doesn't involve anyone sacrificing themselves. The group fell silent, each lost in their own train of thought, struggling to connect their deeper truths with the terror outside. Just then, something thudded against the door, a bone-rattling hit that sent splinters cascading to the ground. Mark felt something shift within him, a spark of courage igniting as he faced the others. We can't hide anymore. If we contain our fears, we'll find our power. Let us lay it all out there for the others to see. What if it wants our fears? Joe challenged, his face a mask of confusion. What if it feeds off us sharing the darkness? Then we gain control over those fears. We own them. Sarah shouted, determination breaking through her fear. As if spurred by their words, the door shuddered again, threatening to break under the weight of the darkness pressing against it. "Who will give the gift?" echoed a voice, mixed with malice and mirth, yanking at their resolve. They all turned, eyes blazing with a mix of fear and defiance. The shadows flared up, feeding on the uncertainty swirling among them. "This isn't just about facing what's outside," Mark whispered, in a voice steadier than he felt. "It's about facing what's within. Together." Then, unexpectedly, the door crashed open. An overwhelming gust of cold air poured in, wrapping itself around them like a vice. The darkness surged, hungry and wild, as did the laughter. "Step forward." The entity beckoned, its voice an enticing whisper laden with treachery. Mark stood tall, his pulse racing, as anticipation electrified the air. They had to choose. No more hiding, but then a realization hit him with the force of a freight train. Wait, what if it's not just fear? What if it craves hope? As the shadows thickened, one question loomed larger than the rest. Would hope be enough to save them, or would they be consumed by the very darkness they sought to confront? The moment of truth had arrived, and the weight of the entity's demand pressed down on them like an iron fist. The air crackled with electricity, a sharp edge of uncertainty threatening to pierce through their fragile determination. Mark stood in the center, heart pounding, thoughts racing through a labyrinth of terror and resolution. Whatever lay outside the door could crush them or grant them freedom, and everyone knew it. "Hope," he murmured, letting the word take root in his mind. The entity's grasp on them tightened. An almost maddening hunger hummed through the air, and they could feel the shadows slithering at their feet, waiting for their choice. It was then to face fear or to find hope. The hearts of his friends flickered between surrender and defiance. They had clung to the comfort of ignorance for too long, but there in that cluttered, dimly lit room, they were ready to confront the grotesque versions of the people they loved. "What do we have to lose?" Sarah said, stepping forward, a fire igniting in her eyes. "If it craves fear, then let us give it something it doesn't expect. Let us show it who we really are." The shadows writhed, the laughter of the creature morphed again, an unsettling sound that pierced their resolve. Mark nodded, and with that shared conviction igniting in their chests, they gathered as one point. One by one, they spoke, drawing strength from their shared horror. Joe's voice rose above the din. "I regret the times I pushed people away, thinking it would make me stronger. I see now it only isolates me. I want to change that." Each admission softened the darkness surrounding them, dimming its hold. Lisa spoke next, her eyes shimmering with tears. "I've always hidden behind my bravado. Fear of failure kept me quiet when I should have spoken up. I let the shadows suffocate my truth." With each revelation, their fears intertwined with hope, creating powerful energy that began to neutralize the menacing force outside. "I never believed I could be worthy of love," Josh's shaky voice broke through. "But I want to let people in. I refuse to keep running." The shadows recoiled, swirling like smoke, losing some of their grip. Mark felt an urge rising inside of him, a power boiling over. "And I refuse to let fear dictate my life. I've been afraid of becoming my mistakes, but I stand here with all of you. Almost like a family. Together, we are stronger than this darkness." The laughter turned feral, a ghoulish cacophony that bounced off the walls. Shadows curled and whipped around them, almost in protest. The entity roared, its voice now thunderous and commanding, "You are still bound by your fears. You cannot withstand me." But they stood firm, leaning into each other, drawing strength from the bonds they forged together. Their voices an anthem against despair rose up, creating a shield against the darkness. Together. They shouted, a word saturated with defiance and light, flooding the small room. Hope hung heavy in the air, shimmering like a beacon cutting through the fog. And slowly, without warning, the shadows began to retreat, inching away from the crack in the door, dissipating like mist chased by the sun. The air felt lighter, vibrant, alive. The howling winds outside softened to whispers, and for the first time, they felt it, a wave of warmth surging around them. Mark's heart swelled, filled with a kindling of hope. "You thought you could consume us," he called out, "but together, we are endless." As the remnants of darkness withdrew, a powerful force pushed against the door. It broke open wider, and instead of an all-consuming void, light spilled into the room, flooding them with a radiant glow. The weight of shadows vanished into nothing, leaving clarity in its wake. The night had released its grip, and though the effects would linger in their memories, they were free, marked but unbroken. In that victory, they found pieces of each other they didn't even know were missing. Shattered reflections produced something vibrant and whole. The sun now glimmered with promise outside. It wasn't just dawn, it was a reminder of resilience. A new beginning. "We're never going back there," Lisa said, a timid smile creeping over her face. "Never facing that fear without each other again." They all nodded, hearts still racing, but no longer with fear now, with hope. As they stepped into the day, hands clasped tightly, they turned back to the echoes of Moonlight Hill, now a mere shadow behind them. The whispers had faded, no longer haunting but educational reminders of what could happen if they lost sight of connection amid life's ghosts. "Are we truly free?" Josh asked, glancing at the others with a mix of hope and apprehension. They could sense it, a knowing among them that life would always come with its shadows, but now they would face them together. United, they could withstand whatever darkness dared cross their path. "Always," Sarah declared, her voice unwavering. With the sun shining brightly ahead, they moved forward, ready to write new stories and face new fears together. Society would share tales of the full moon, but they would remind themselves it was their choice to redefine the narrative. As they walked into the vibrant warmth, a new adventure awaited, shadows trailing behind but kept at bay, and they were finally ready to embrace it all. And you? If you loved this conclusion, this is your moment. You need to subscribe now so you won't miss another thrilling story that awaits. Smash that like button now because it fuels our passion to create. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories, and don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to see how this ended. Together, we can keep this incredible community alive.